Hello. I haven't seen you guys, I think it's been years since I posted on this channel. Yikes. But, life happened. This was the first year that I had a full-time job that really took up more time, and it was a learning curve. I'm excited to talk to you guys today about me finishing 15 books in 6 months, which is the most I've read in a year and probably since elementary school, because I used to read all the time in elementary school, and around like junior high, high school times, I got a little bit back into it around high school when like John Green was releasing books like The Fault in Our Stars, Hunger Games. I was into all that. I was into Twilight. I read Twilight like so fast. I would literally bring my books to the restaurant and have it at the table. I was into it, and it's just been a while since I've really gotten back into reading, and this year I was set a goal for myself. I was like, I'm gonna read 15 books this year, and I've already met that goal in June, so I'm just really excited to like share what I've thought about the books I read, what 5-star reads that I've gotten this year. Follow me on Goodreads. I'll have my link down below if you're interested. I love Goodreads. I post on there quite a bit because it's like my favorite social media app, just to share what books I'm reading, share my progress, look at what other books other people are reading, and see what I want to read and add to my to be read list, because I love making lists and seeing what books I can read next. I just get so excited about it. I also got a reading journal that I've been sharing my finished books in, and then showing like what I rated them. I actually had quite a good amount of 5 or 4-star reads. To start off the year, I read Hidden in Snow by Viveka Sten. This book was based in Switzerland, I believe, and I started it at the end of 2022 but finished it in 2023, so I counted. Read it for the majority of 2023. It was interesting. It was about this murder happened like dark and snowy out, and it's hard to see during that time of day when it happened. There was this girl that was cleaning houses that was nearby, was let go from the police force as a detective, and then she tries to get herself involved and help out with the case. I started out the year reading quite a bit of like suspense or crime because that is my go-to genre, and I've branched out quite a bit throughout the year, but that is my go-to genre when I want to look for a new book to read. Mainly that's why I picked this up, and it was on Kindle Unlimited, and I had a free trial, and it was a 4-star read for me. I don't know if I would go back and read it again, but it was suspenseful, mystery, it was interesting. The next book I read was Never Lie by Frida McFadden. This was also on Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy of the book with me. This was also a thriller, crime, mystery sort of book. I really enjoyed this. It was set in this old house that this couple was looking to move into, and she immediately got a weird vibe from it, but her husband, I believe, just sort of thought, I don't see anything wrong with this house. I don't really understand where you're getting the bad vibes. And she also felt weird like expressing that to him because she didn't think he would believe her. But this was an old house that was owned by a psychologist therapist and had this whole room of tapes. She had this relationship with a patient that turned into something more. I feel like it's really hard for me to try and explain a book without giving spoilers, but I feel like that's a good synopsis. Good, suspenseful. Frida McFadden is really good at suspense and writing quick chapters, keeping you captivated, so that was a 4-star read for me as well. Next book, I finally finished the Harry Potter series. This took me several years, I believe, to actually read through the whole thing. Yes, I've seen all the movies, but I was pretty young when the books came out, so I only read the first book and I never got past that. I've got the box set and I dove into the series, and I really see why this was such a cult favorite series. Deathly Hallows took me a lot longer to read. It had some really slow parts and then it sped up towards certain parts, but it took me a while to get to that part where it was sped up and the climax of the story. But I did rate it 4 stars. I don't judge me for not giving it a 5-star, but like just wasn't my favorite out of the series. I think my favorite was probably maybe Prisoner of Azkaban. I'm not sure though. I'll have to look back and see like what I thought of each one. After I read that, I read The Silent Patient by Alex, I don't know how to say his last name, Alex M, that's what I'll say. And I know this is a popular book that a lot of people dove into, and I actually was gifted this book by my friend Ashley, so thank you, Ashley, for giving me the book. This was a 5-star read for me. I could not put this book down once I got into it. Very suspenseful, very just the whole time you're guessing, trying to figure out why this. So let me tell you the premise of the story first. There's this woman that is in a psychiatric facility and she will not speak about what happened to her, and she is in there because she murdered her husband. And there is a therapist that is trying to get her to talk and get her story out of her, but she is silent, so it's really hard to try to get her story out of her when she's been completely silent for so long. You're hearing about her perspective because she wrote in journals, and so they're showing her journals before everything happened, maybe what led to her ending up in the psychiatric facility and the therapist trying to get it out of her and see what happened. So it's very suspenseful, very interesting. I totally recommend that book. The next book, totally different than these past books that I've talked about, is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. This was a random pickup that I got at a bookstore. This was a 3-star read for me. Like, I expected it to be more than it was because it was told in the perspective of this little girl. Her grandmother taught her all these things, and so she's trying to live by her grandma while helping all of these people in her life. I don't know if I just didn't like the plot. I think that was the main thing. I just couldn't get into the book very much. I felt like there was nothing that was keeping me captivated, so it was more of a book that I didn't love to pick up and read, but it was a 3-star read. I still enjoyed the perspective of the little girl and hearing what her thoughts were like on living by her grandma and helping people, so it was very interesting. I definitely want to read. There's a different book I added to my to be read by this author because I am interested in checking out some of his other books. Next book I read, this book has been on my shelf for I don't even know how long. I've moved multiple times since this book has been on my shelf, so it's been there for quite a while. I read IQ by Joe Ide. This book was just this young teenager trying to solve crimes, even though he is not a legalized cop or detective or anything. He just wants to do that. I don't have this book anymore, so I don't have anything to look at to try to remember some of the facts about it, but it just wasn't my vibe for a crime book. Like, I feel like if I'm reading a crime book, I want suspense, I want thriller. It wasn't really giving me that. It was derogatory, and just don't know if I loved the author. Sorry if you love that book. It's like a series, actually. I didn't love it. Next book I read was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, another Frida McFadden book. Would you believe it? I'm actually reading the second Housemaid book, The Housemaid's Secret, right now, which I'm not loving as much as I loved the first Housemaid. The first Housemaid I gave 5 stars because so suspenseful, so thrilling, so captivating. Couldn't put a book down. I remember I read it like the night before, and then I read for like multiple hours the next morning until I finished it because I was just so intrigued by the topic. This book is basically about a woman who's assigned to this rich, wealthy household to be a housemaid for them. She starts to see that the wife of the wealthy family is very rude to her, and she just does not understand why. The man is really nice, and they end up developing a little bit of a relationship. It gets a little spicy. There's also a gardener that plays a important role in this story. I don't know how to say too much about giving stuff away, but it just turns into a kind of a mystery that you're trying to unfold, and you're figuring out, why does this family have the issues it does? Why are they so picky about her having the house clean? Why is the blanket on the floor? You cannot sit in the living room while we're here. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that read. I'm not sure if I'm enjoying The Housemaid's Secret as much. Quite halfway yet. Maybe a little. I'm close though. So I can't really judge it, I guess, yet until I finished it. The next book I read was a book I borrowed from my coworker April. Thanks, April. It was She's Gone by David Bell. I know she is really into David Bell books, and she told me this book was just mystery, trying to figure out what happened. It just did not have that suspense and thriller that I like to have with a mystery. It was a bit of a slower read for me. I gave it 3 stars. I still enjoyed it. I think the topic was, it was a little too young for me. It was almost like a YA, but not quite. So it was just not really what I expected. There's this boy who his girlfriend goes missing and they don't know why, and they're blaming him for it, and he's posting videos trying to figure out why she went missing that night, because he lost his memories. They got in a car crash. He wakes up, she's gone. That is the main premise. We don't know where she went. Did he kill her? We don't know. The next book I actually have the physical copy of was I Wish My Teacher Knew. I actually read this for a book study within my work. It's totally different from all my other books. The first book that I've read that was really just educational, but this is written by author Kyle Schwartz. Basically just goes through all of the things that you need in a classroom to make it feel like a welcome community for your kids, and explain what they need. It was interesting. I gave it a 3 stars just because a lot of this I already apply. When I read something and I already know I do that myself, it just kind of feels like, okay, it's reiterating that. I get that. It didn't really teach me much new things that I can incorporate in my classrooms. Next book I read, On the Come Up by Angie Thomas, and I read The Hate You Give and Concrete Rose. Love those books. I believe they were both 5-star reads for me. On the Come Up was a 3-star read for me, and I mainly believe that is because the plot was not what I expected it to be. The main focus of this book is there is a 16-year-old girl, Brie, who wants to become one of the greatest rappers of all time. She has a lot of influences. It's her main way she can express herself, what gets her excited about life. I think she lives in the garden, like the same realm that Angie Thomas's other 2 books were written in. Aunt Pooh becomes her manager, but Aunt Pooh is also dealing with a drug addiction, not having a safe place to live. Her family is dealing with poverty. Jay is trying to leave the household with her and her brother and try to provide them with what they need. Jay is her mom, but she doesn't call her mom because of the relationship she has with her. Jay dealt with a drug addiction in her past, so it's hard for her to find jobs, and that is the main reason why they're dealing with the poverty. I do recommend this book. Recommend Angie Thomas in general. Great writer. I love her writing very much. Very easy to read. A lot of the times it has humor in her books, which I enjoy. I think I just thought it was more going to be about her getting into the rap scene, and it takes her quite a while to get there, and yes, she does get there, but it just takes a minute, and there's a lot more plot that is not about that, so I just didn't expect that, but I still liked it. I need to get on to a different book. It's 21 minutes. Next book I read, you already know. You've probably heard about this book before. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read Seven Husbands by Taylor Jenkins Reid and loved it so much. Daisy Jones 6, 5-star read for me. Read it pretty quickly, I would say. Once I got to a certain point, I just really wanted to finish it and find out what happens. So basically this book is set in the late 60s in LA about a band that is trying to find their way up and get themselves known, and they come across this girl named Daisy who ends up joining their band, and there's just a lot of drama that happens within the band that involves Daisy and the main singer of the Six, who is named Billy. And it's set in the style of an interview, kind of like reading a play. Like, I haven't read a book like this in a long time. It made it a quick read for me. It's not set in paragraphs or anything like that, or it is set in chapters and different parts of their albums and tours and things. Like, this one's Aurora, so that's when their album came out. Just totally recommend this and watching the show after you read it, because wow. Next book was Homebody by Rupi Kaur, who I got from my best friend Emily, who got me for my birthday. And I've read other collections by Rupi Kaur of her poetry. I don't know if I'm saying her last name correctly. I'm sorry if I'm not. Read this in a day, and I'm not trying to fly through it. It just kind of happens that way because I want to keep reading more of her poetry and it becomes a quick read. I gave this 3 stars because it wasn't my favorite book of poetry by her, but there were a lot of poems I connected to that I took pictures of because I loved the illustrations with them. There was a certain section that I really liked. This one is from the rest section, and it has this pretty sun coming out of the roots of the ground, and it says we can work at our own pace and still be successful, which I appreciated because as a teacher you often find that you're not doing enough and you just need to remind yourself it's okay to take rests, it's okay to take breaks. There was a lot of poems I connected with. I think The Sun and Our Flowers and Milk and Honey, though, will also always be special poetry books to me. Next book, which you also have probably heard of a lot, is Court of Thorns and Roses. Wow. I haven't delved into a fantasy book in so long, and this just reminded me of my love for fantasy books because I used to read, well, Hunger Games really isn't considered fantasy, but more dystopian. Mortal Instruments, City of Bones. Like, it just brought back that deep interest and fascination that I have with fantasy books, so I was so excited about this. I read this one pretty quickly because I just found the storyline so interesting, and I also ordered the box set, so I'm so excited to read A Court of Mist and Fury. I've been waiting for it to come in the mail. This 19-year-old huntress, Fair, kills a wolf in the woods for her family because she is the main provider, and they live in the mortal lands, which are separated from the fairy land. When she kills the wolf, all of a sudden this fairy comes for her family and is like, you killed one of my brothers, so you must pay the price. Takes Fair away from her family, and she's now living in the fairy world. They end up providing a very good life for her. She doesn't have to worry about food anymore. She's dressed beautifully. She's living in this home that's beautiful with art, which she loves to do. She loves to paint. The main fairy that took her actually says, I am providing for your family, so you do not have to worry about them, because her main wish from her mom was that you need to provide for the family. So she was very worried about, once she left, that her family would not be okay because she wanted to follow her mother's wishes. It turns into a completely different story towards the end. Lots of action. There's some spicy scenes, which I enjoy, so very good read. Recommend this for sure if you feel like you haven't gotten into fantasy in a while, you've heard about this book, you feel like you want to get into it, get into it. I forgot about, this one was more recent. This one was quite a while ago. This was not in my books finished on my reading journal because I did not like it at all. This is Gone by Michael Grant. This is a series. It's a big old book. So you think, wow, it's got to be filled with so much interesting things going on. No, not at all. I mainly feel like I picked this up because of the cover, because it looked interesting to me, which, yeah, I know. But it was a while ago that I picked this up. Basically, premise of this book, everyone except for the young people in this world disappear all of a sudden. And once people are getting to their birthdays of turning 15 or 14 or something, they disappear as well. I figured out how to stop it. There's a lot of, between the private school and the public school, there's a lot of drama starting because the private school feels like they can take over and save the world, but the public school's like, nah, y'all are being crazy with your superpowers. There's also superpowers involved in this book. They're trying to take care of all the babies that now don't have mothers. It seems like a very good idea for a book, but not what you expect at all. I don't really recommend this unless you feel like you could really get into it and you really love YA, then maybe you might enjoy it. I think I rated that 2 stars, and I only rated it 2 stars, I think, because I actually got to the end and I finished it. I'm surprised I didn't DNF that book because it was really hard to get through. Let's end this on a good note, okay? The most recent book I finished was I'll Give You the Sun by Janie Nelson, which I read in 2 days. Her writing is full of similes and metaphors and so descriptive, and I gave it 5-star read because, wow, it made me emotional in the end. It's told between these 2 perspectives of these 2 twins, and it flips back and forth between Noah, the twin, telling the early parts of their life, and Jude, his twin sister, telling about the later parts of their life. So you're going back and forth. Jude has a hard relationship with her mother that she's navigating, and she's also trying to rebel against her mother into partying, get into boys, and however she wants, because her mom doesn't want her to wear certain things. She's like, you don't want to be that girl, and she just wants to rebel against that. Noah is, to me, I feel like he is neurodivergent. He finds himself wanting to be a chameleon when he's around people and just wants to blend in, but he's just so different in the way he expresses himself that he doesn't have many people that are truly friends to him. He deals with bullies immediately at the beginning of the book. I hate reading about bullying. Upset. There's themes of betrayal, grief, queer romance. It's just a great read. I recommend that book. I just actually borrowed it to my best friend Emily so she can give it a read. It was my most recent reads. Right now I'm reading Educated by Tara Westover, and I'm reading The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. So I'm reading 2 books right now. The Housemaid's Secret I can find myself finishing pretty quickly because it's a fast-paced thriller suspense book, which I've read a few by her this year, so I kind of, her books are gonna be a quick read for me. And Educated has been really good so far too. I'm really enjoying that. My first memoir I've read this year. I'm loving it. I've read 15 books. I'm gonna see how many I can get by the end of this year, so I'm very excited about that. If you enjoyed watching, give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe, I guess. I don't know, maybe I'll try to make an update video on what I've read. I don't usually post reading videos on here, but I've just really gotten into it this year, so I thought I would give a little update. Let me know what you guys are reading, if any of these books you also loved or read this year, and if you have any recommendations for me. I will take it all. So have a great day. Bye.